It's Tuesday, February 4th. I'm Adam Walsh, and this is The Signal. The electric vehicle market in this province remains one of the smallest in Canada. We love our gas guzzlers. What would it take to convince more of us, more of you, to drive electric? I've got 3 EV drivers here in the studio. We're going to dig into that question. And before we jump into it, hello to everyone in Nain. Thank you for being so nice over the last few days when I was up there, especially with the delays to flights in and out. Lots of learning bits for Adam Walsh up and around, and it was a lot of fun to be in the community and to meet everyone. So I just wanted to throw that out there at the beginning of the show. Nakamek, folks. EVs. The EV crowd tells us an electric car is more fun to drive. It's cheaper and has benefits you may not have thought of. But folks in this province not buying it just yet for a lot of folks. While the number of EVs on the roads has increased, it's still a tiny fraction of auto sales across the province. But today we're asking how affordable, how convenient is it to drive electric in Newfoundland and Labrador? What are your thoughts on this? Are you an EV driver? Are you considering it? And if you are not, why not? If you are, why? Give us your thoughts. The lines are open today for this conversation. You can give us a call, 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. You can text us, 709-327-8206, thesignal@cbc.ca for your emails. In the studio here, we've got 2 co-founders of Drive Electric N.L, Joe Butler, who drives a Tesla Model Y and a Chevy Bolt. Is that correct? All right. Correct. Jamie Fitzpatrick took great notes for the show today. Jon Seary gets around in a Ford Lightning pickup, and you've got a Tesla Model X, right?
Yep.
Excellent. And also joining us, we've got Heather Godden, not a car fanatic, according to my notes, but tell us what you drive.
A Kia EV6.
How's the Kia EV6 treating you? How long have you had it?
It's a joy.
Yeah? Why is it a joy?
We leased it at the beginning of August 23. Why is it a joy?
Huh.
It's just fun. It's so much fun, as a matter of fact, that we've already gone over our yearly mileage allowance with the lease that we signed. But we had a chat with the dealership, and they assured us that wasn't anything to be concerned about. And once we did the math, we realized it wasn't.
Yeah.
It's smooth. The acceleration is exhilarating. Mm-hmm. I think once EVs are on the road a good bit, that all the young people out there who like to drive are going to be in trouble, because it's a lot of fun to accelerate when you can. So you got to watch that. But the good thing about that is that it decelerates as quickly as it accelerates. It's smooth, and and not to be smug, but it's really nice to drive past the gas stations.
Yeah. Yep.
And not have to worry about that.
And what, before I jump to the boys here, for costs, like what have you noticed, like for the not having to fill up? Well, what have you noticed with this?
Well, knowing I was coming on the show, I got out the calculator. We used to spend.
I love it when people prepare themselves for the show.
Well, I was a teacher, so. We averaged about $253 a month in gas, and that's driving around the city and in and out to, say, CBS and the Portugal Cove, St. Philip's area. I taught at Beachy Cove Elementary, so that was an almost 20-minute drive back and forth each day. Anyway, $253 a month average, one vehicle. And a couple of years ago, we decided to switch from oil to electric in our home. So the timing was really good, because we were going to take advantage of the Greener Homes grant, and we installed a multi-split, which is 2 mini splits in a big unit. So our home is entirely heated electrically via the multi-split now, and so we had to upgrade from 100 amp to 200 amp. So the timing was good there, because we figured, okay, we always wanted to drive electric, and we knew our lease end was coming up on the Subaru Outback that we drove. So we had a charger installed at the time when the electric work was being done. And so what I've determined, and now we've had, almost a year and a half of driving this one.
So you've got some time in, yeah?
Yeah. So equal payment plan is in place, and it's a little hard to say exactly how much we spend on the on the car itself, but the boys will tell us that. But I know that our heating has we have to have a secondary heat source, which is the oil furnace. So I say it's our hot water heater right now. That's down to less than half. The electricity is double, but there's no gas. So having said that, we're about $340-something ahead each month, and that's not counting the rebates that we got, the federal rebate that was in place at the time, and the provincial one.
Right. So yeah, your money in.
More money in, yeah.
In the black, as they say.
Yes.
My brother-in-law drives. So I was in South Korea back in the fall, and he drives the the Hyundai Ioniq 5. Great. I mean, it was really comfortable to sit down, and I was like, "Oh, this is kind of neat." Right. So driving around in South Korea in a South Korean car, so it was great. All right, guys. So we start with this opening a new, like a relative newbie to the EV world, right? Mm-hmm. What do you make of the conversation that you're just hearing? Like, is this a normal type of a conversation for folks as they start to get into it when it comes to EVs?
The biggest thing that we hear from new drivers after they've been, 6 or 12 months behind the wheel is, why didn't we do this long ago?
Yeah.
It's what Heather said there about the savings are dead on. To put a finer point on it, take what you're spending on gas and oil right now and divide it by 8. In this province, it's about 8 times as much to drive the same distance in a similar gas car compared to an electric car, based on our electricity rates and our fuel rates and the occasional oil change.
How long have you guys, so Drive Electric N.L, Joe, how long have you guys been around again? Remind me.
Drive Electric N.L has been around 7 years. Is that
Since 2018.
Okay, I'm pretty on.
There you go, pretty good. What's this moment like now where we are? I know there's a lot of complicating factors to this moment right now, and we can unpack that through the show. But compared to when you started to now, where are we? Like, how do you feel things are progressing with folks moving over, infrastructure, everything else? Like, where are things at?
Well, I guess that the biggest thing is I've been driving, I started with hybrids 15 years ago. I've been driving, this is my 10th year driving all electric. So the biggest change I've seen is the infrastructure, particularly on the highway.
Yep.
And the first round or second round, which brought it right across from St. John's to Port aux Basques, has helped tremendously. Last year, because in the summer months, I do back and forth to Corner Brook on a regular basis. So I charged 1/3 of my charging was done on the highway at these faster locations. So I think that's made a huge difference. Also, the difference I see, particularly in the last 2 years, even though we've got a long ways to go, there's not a single day I leave and I generally know my cars. I don't pass another electric car going one way or the other.
Okay. John?
Yeah, I see that as well. The thing that I find now is, just like yourself before the show, I wasn't surprised that you said our next vehicle is going to be electric. 2 or 3 years ago, I'd be, hey, right on, that's great. And now it's like, of course it is. And anybody now that has that's driving any kind of a passenger vehicle now or a pickup truck now, you have several options. And unless you are, fully die hard, I am not going there for whatever reason you might have, I'm finding fewer and fewer reasons why people can't make their next vehicle electric and realize the savings that we have and the nicer drive and so on. And, the savings we're a 2-car family. We have 4 kids. We're bringing those kids back and forth to school and activities. We are going out for work, all those sorts of things. We are averaging between those cars between $4,000 and $6,000 a year saved compared to running similar gas vehicles. And that's your after-tax income. There's nobody giving you something to offset that. But on top of that, your carbon tax rebate, which everybody looks and says, oh, look at that deposit into our account. Well, that's just paying me back money I spent on gas. Well, EV drivers get the carbon tax rebate too.
Yeah, they do, yeah.
And one of my employees who's been driving 2.5 years in a Kona ran the numbers. And in total, his 2 years of driving have cost him about $140. after he added the carbon tax rebate into his charging costs.
Yeah, now it seems like the shelf life for that it might be ending depending on who the next or how the next election goes and who the leader is, but it's still here for now. And I'm mentioning, of course, the federal election that will be happening at some point this year. But I mean, we also have a provincial one and municipal ones. 3 elections this year. All right, folks, you're listening to The Signal. I'm Adam Walsh. Today we're talking about electric vehicles, and we're asking whether or not you think, do you drive one? Are you thinking about driving one? Why? Why not? What would it take to get you to drive one? There's a lot of different kind of angles we can take for this conversation today, and I'm up for all of them, from saving money. There's the climate change, obviously, climate change conversation. Some of that can be, there's extra context there that can be unpacked as well. The phone lines are open, 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. You can text us, 709-327-8206. Emails, thesignal@cbc.ca. Sue Rose is on the line. Hi, Sue.
Hi, I had to call in, Adam, because I bought in October 2023. I retired and gave up my tourism business. Still doing a little bit of advocacy, but I wanted to travel and do it cheaply. And I was following Jon Seary for a long time. And Jon purchased a Volkswagen ID4 Pro, and that's exactly what I purchased. And I had a van before that because I had a tourism business, and I was spending on the average of about $500 a month in gas. And so far, I've put on my Volkswagen, I've put 34,802 kilometers. And if that were my van, I would have spent, and I hope I got the calculations right, that would have been about 70 tanks of gas at $125 on the average of a tank of gas. I would have spent $8,750. Adding up what I've spent on ChargePoint and what I do, a home charger, I'm pretty sure it's 13 cents a kilowatt hour. Is that correct?
13 plus HST, so about 16 comes to mind. But yeah, keep going, Sue.
Okay, yeah. And so if you look at what I've spent with ChargePoint and my home charger, I've calculated that to be about $730 to $750.
Right.
So do the math. Wow. Since October 2023 to January 2025, I have saved $8,000. That's my trip to Portugal in April.
It's money well saved, Sue. That's great to hear.
Good on you.
So I just, great to listen to this today, and I'm very proud to be contributing to, the climate change issues we're having, and that was another biggie for me. So I'm so happy. It's the most powerful car I've ever owned. I think it's 300 horsepower. My problem is I've got to be careful, because when you pull out and pass someone, you'd be doing 170 in no time. So I love the car. Great show. I'll go now.
Send us some pictures from Portugal when you're there. Thanks, Sue.
Just to clarify, yes, my wife has the Volkswagen ID4. Yeah. We mentioned that I had the Model X and the F-150 Lightning as well. And in our fleet, we also have a Model 3, a Tesla Model 3. So we have the real-world experience with 4 different EVs right now, just to be able to compare. Plus, we try out other ones from time to time.
So there was a meeting in St. John's last week with EcoNext, was there?
There was. EcoNext had a 3-hour sort of conference last week, and the provincial government spoke, the Hydro spoke, and the City of St. John's top of the electric buses. But on the environmental side, it was interesting, the provincial government said there's 43% of the emissions are passenger cars. Mm-hmm. Now, while we have a low number in Newfoundland right now of plug-in electric and also all electric, maybe close to 2,000. If you average 5 tons each, that's about 100,000 tons permanent reduction every year. Yeah. On the flip side of that, we've got a 92% renewable energy came off our grid last year.
Yeah, we're not burning coal, right? Now, yes, Bunker C. There's still the discussion for the standby at Holyrood Shore.
That's the other 8%.
Just tossing that one out there for context for folks. Yeah. So the environmental side. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, our grid is much cleaner than many other areas, but what the studies show is that even if you had a dirty grid and switched your vehicles to electric, your emissions are still reduced significantly because your cost per kilowatt hour produces a lot less emissions when you have coal fire than if you're trying to make that same energy with a gas car.
How many EVs did we say are on the road roughly that we know about in the province?
About 2,000 right now.
Okay.
Last figures that I saw showed that our sales are around 1.8, 1.9% of new vehicle sales. It's actually sort of flat from last year, whereas in comparison, provinces like Quebec and BC, which have a zero-emission vehicle mandate at the provincial level, are seeing 25 to 28% of new vehicles are sold. And then if you look across the Atlantic to Norway, which, there's not a lot of differences. Yes, they're their own country, but the climate is the same. Its economy has got similarities. There, with over 90% of new vehicles are electric, and now more than half the vehicles on the road are fully electric. I mean, if they can do it, we can do it, especially given the fact that we are just sending all that money on gasoline out of the province.
Mm-hmm. Really good point there, right? As I look in the call sheet, I was about to ask another question, but we've got Michael on the line from Bonavista. Hi, Michael.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm good. Interesting topic.
Thoughts?
So, there was a time that I was for electric vehicles, but I think the overall problem with humanity is our addiction to energy. And by moving on to electric cars, and we consume the same amount of energy, the sort of destruction the sort of mining that it's going to require to produce these batteries, we're going to end up with a whole set of new problems that I think it's only solvable by a massive change in the way that we live. But the thing is no one's up for that, right? No one really wants to have that conversation.
Yeah, and I've said this before on the show too. There's was one of the New York Times podcasts I was listening to a while ago. They said, folks are really looking for like 19th century emissions with 21st century lifestyles for what we need for climate change. And there was another one I was listening to the New Yorker radio hour a while ago, and like the higher climate discussion was that if it's a 1-to-1 replacement from this, it's a mining. The guest was a mining expert and talking about resource extraction, and he was just saying, yes, if you do a 1-to-1 replacement for all the vehicles on the road, there's a separate set of problems that can come up, right? Because like EVs are not a silver bullet for climate change, but the way he put it was that they're part of a stack, right? So yes, you need to move them to electric, but then also it's have fewer of them, have an electrified bus system, and we need to kind of reduce consumption around it to have the larger climate change discussion. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's going to require a change much bigger than just electrifying buses. I mean, the way that we live and become very dependent on cars in general, I don't think it works for this planet. And yes, there's the issue of climate change, but there are a lot of other things going wrong with the planet than just climate change. And there's a number of documentaries out there that are science-based that talk about all of these systems on the planet that are beginning to fail, the massive drop in species around the world. We have these huge impacts. Right here on the island, just gold mining. If you just take gold, the sort of damage that we're doing in Central to the caribou herds that have been there for ages. But what I've quickly learned is that Newfoundland and Labrador never says no to a mining project, no matter the cost. And I just don't think it's worth the cost so much of all of this. Again, this probably sounds really radical, but when you really look at the science and look at consider that we think we can continue to live the way we're living, even with electric cars, it just doesn't add up, unfortunately. And that's really sad for me, because I at one point thought, oh, that's the answer. But there's always problems when it comes to consumption. And one of the most wise comments I've ever heard was by a man named Stephen Chinkinson. He said, for every convenience, there is a cost. And our lives are all about convenience. And so the cost is enormous.
Michael, thanks so much. Look, and I don't think it's like your thoughts here. I don't think they sound radical. I think it's important to have folks with your point of view come on the air and tell us this stuff too, right? So I really appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks for the show.
All right, cheers.
Okay.
All right, Michael, they're calling from Bonavista. Folks, any thought? Because, yes, I mean, there's a larger the safety of the planet discussion to be had, right, around our consumption and everything else. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, with all due respect, and that makes a lot of sense, but you can't let perfection get in the way of progress. And progress is that we will get people off gas and oil. For example, right now, some of the minerals required for the batteries are mined by Vale in Labrador, processed in Argentina, processed in Argentia, and 15 years later, when that car gets recycled, the battery is going to go to Hamilton, and they will recover 90% of those minerals. So if you look at from a local, particularly in this world of tariffs, et cetera, that was just a full loop within Canada.
Thoughts, John?
Yeah, to echo what Joe was saying, and I get what the caller was saying. I mean, ideally, we would all move closer together. We would have a monorail outside our door to pick us up and be fully electric and all the rest of it. The reality is we live in a climate where that sort of infrastructure is difficult to put in and justify. And so the alternative we have is individual vehicles. But what Joe said is you look at the ongoing environmental cost of driving a gas vehicle and the extraction that's required for every kilometer it drives versus the one-time cost of getting battery materials mined and processed, but then can be recycled. And Joe said 90%, but it's actually higher than that now. Those minerals are too valuable to throw away, and the companies that will be recycling those batteries, when they're ready to recycle, because most of them are still in production, then means that we don't have to mine them again. It's a one-time mining effort.
Heather, what do you think?
I'm sitting here and I'm listening to that because that's interesting and I'm glad to know. And I'm interested in what Michael had to say as well. And I was thinking, as an average person on the street, I know, well, two things. When I was driving gas and when I'm driving now electric and I'm sitting in traffic and I'm inhaling the exhaust from the other cars around me, I have a habit of switching to inside air because I can't stand the smell of the exhaust in my car. And we're sitting here across from the Health Sciences Centre, and I'm thinking about, make no wonder 2 in 4 of us are going to be diagnosed with some cancer. Heard that this morning.
It's a cheery stat.
Yeah, isn't it? Ugh. Anyway, not all unbeatable. But, to me, it's just the exhaust. And when I was teaching, there were a lot of buses at the school where I taught, and we'd be lining children up at the end of the day to go out to the buses, and you're in the building smelling the exhaust from the buses outside. So that little thing for me, I would say to Michael, well, yeah, there is a big world problem, and maybe I don't think globally enough, but for me, the average person on the street, I just want less exhaust in my air, and I just want to be clean.
Well, this is why I appreciate these conversations so much, is to get the macro to the micro inputs from folks and thoughts on from the global, oh my gosh, like we're eating the planet, down to like, well, actually, if we get rid of the exhaust in and around communities, there's better health to be had there too, right? I've spent a lot of time in South Korea where when I first went there, and there was a lot more EVs on the road now, and like you are noticing some changes, right, with it, even though there's still a lot, because for the years, like a lot of vehicles were burning diesel. Yeah. So like, you can notice change. So like, but I appreciate the full range of the conversation. So,
school buses.
What?
School buses.
School buses, right?
Electric school buses should be an absolute priority in this province. Absolute, absolute, absolute. You're taking the children whose lungs are still developing, and you're allowing that. It doesn't stay outside the bus. It goes inside the bus. It's around the kids. It doesn't sort of just disappear up into the stratosphere. It pulls around the building. And there's absolutely no reason why we couldn't have every school bus fully electric in the next 5 years in this province. None whatsoever. And I'm right now, I'll say to whoever in government is listening, let's see that done. Just don't hesitate. Every other jurisdiction is doing it except this province.
Ooh.
All right, we've got Amanda Dean on the line here now. Amanda is the Vice President, Ontario and Atlantic for the Insurance Bureau of Canada. Hi, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. Thanks for coming on the show today. So on the insurance side of things for EVs, I'm just wondering the cost comparison between insuring electric cars versus gas and or diesel vehicles.
Yeah, one of the things that is the clear driver of premiums is claims costs. And one of the things, too, that impacts from an insurance perspective impacts from an owner's perspective. So it's not just insurers who are impacted by the repair costs. So the major challenge with EVs lies in repair costs, as they require certified technicians who are not always readily available. And this shortage of certified repair options is leading to challenges. But again, that's not just challenges for insurers, and certainly insurers recognize this as green technology, and the industry wants to do what it can to support the use of green technology.
Yeah, if your car is more expensive and more complicated, it costs more to repair and or to replace if it gets damaged or written off. What is the difference then? What are we talking about for like some averages here?
Well, it would certainly depend on the driver's history. In addition to the vehicle, it would also depend on the insurer. So some insurers may have more experience in underwriting EVs, as they are still a relatively new technology on the market. They may have more of an understanding. They may have invested in more research. They may have invested in having conversations with more mechanics when it comes to EVs. So all of that could combine to make some insurers a bit more competitive than others when underwriting EVs. And again, the more EVs we get on the road, the more experience insurers will have, and the more opportunity there is for customers to find better prices, because it will be more competitive on the insurance side.
I know it depends, but what can the differences be? Are we talking like if you have someone who's got like a spotless driving record and they're with an insurance company that knows a little bit that's underwritten a few of these, like are we talking like tens of dollars, the hundreds? Like what can the range be?
Well, insurance records for an individual driver can vary. So you could have somebody with a spotless record. You could have somebody with a couple of distracted driving infractions. You could have somebody with a DUI criminal code conviction. So it could double or triple in premium, especially for that last case. So it just quite frankly
really
depends on some of the factors.
Or if you're a new Canadian with no driving experience in the country, you're paying through the nose as well.
If you're in that particular, sorry to cut you off, but if you're in that particular situation, being able to obtain your driving record from your home country helps enormously. Sometimes those driving records need to be translated. And when you're reaching out to your broker or agent in order to get that driving record from your home country and get a price, make sure that the broker or agent is manually checking the system for you. Insurers' automated systems, they will look at zero driving experience in Canada as 0 years driving experience. It doesn't matter if you're 16, 30, or 45. The other thing to take into consideration is being able to provide as much information as you can about your driving history, your driving experience. It all helps.
Thanks for that. I've been wanting more answers around that for a while, so I appreciate you taking that part up for me.
No problem.
Last question before I get back to my guests here in the studio, and you partly mentioned this, to bring insurance costs around EVs in line with other vehicles, or just to bring them down. You mentioned it's about more on the road and once more get on the road, I guess more insurance companies will have expertise and experience in underwriting them. Plus, you'd have more mechanics and people who are fixing them, which could hopefully bring things down. Is that correct?
It is absolutely correct. And also one of the concerns certainly that's emerging with EVs is fires. And it's not that internal combustion engines don't catch fire. They probably catch fire with the same frequency, but EVs tend to burn with a greater intensity. So we understand that fire extinguishing techniques for EVs are not yet standardized across the board. Our industry is talking to different firefighters, firefighting teams throughout the country. We know that training is ongoing. So as more is known about the types of claims, the types of risk for EVs, again, insurers will be able to better price.
Amanda Dean, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Amanda Dean, their Vice President, Ontario and Atlantic at the Insurance Bureau of Canada. You're listening to The Signal. We're talking about EVs, folks. Do you drive one? Are you curious? Are you not curious? I'd like to know the answer to all of those. The lines are open, 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. Email us, thesignal@cbc.ca, or use your thumbs and text us, 709-327-8206. Here with me in studio, we've got two co-founders of Drive Electric N.L, Joe Butler and Jon Seary. Also, Heather Godden, who's an EV driver, a Kia EV6. All right. Any thoughts on what Amanda was saying there? Because you guys pay insurance on your vehicles, right? So what are your thoughts?
So it was rather peculiar what she just said about the rates being different, because on my policy, I actually have a line there that says a discount for electric vehicle.
Really?
And that's with a common insurer here in town. Nothing special there. And this is because that many EVs have driver assist features that are not standardized on gas cars. That's one thing. But the biggest thing to understand is that the EV experience is much safer. You have a battery that's below the level of your axles, which makes the car kind of like the Weebles wobble, but we won't fall down, the low center of gravity. So your rollover protection is much increased. You're unlikely to roll over the electric vehicle, which means that your injuries to your vehicle occupants, which are the biggest driver of premiums, not repair costs. Your soft tissue injuries are reduced.
Yeah, the people injuries. Yeah.
Your people injuries and your impact, your side impact intrusion into the cabin is significantly reduced. And that's not just me saying it. We've actually had people working with us at the Drive Electric Resource Centre who are alive today because they were in an EV when they had a side impact at an extremely high speed with a large vehicle. Rollover protection reduced and all the rest of it. The fires burn with more intensity, but they are significantly lower per 100,000 vehicles than gas cars, and lower again than plug-in hybrid and hybrid electric cars. So across the board, the EV is a better deal, safer to drive, less chance of rollover, and the insurance companies see that and know that. The bit about getting them repaired and so on, that's yes, it's a bit of a challenge, but more and more dealerships now are having more and more mechanics available to do whatever needs to be done on the cars they sell.
No challenge for us.
Yeah?
Sorry.
Yeah.
No challenge. We just take it up to Kia.
Yeah.
And they service it.
It gets serviced regularly.
On the fire side also, I was a volunteer firefighter for a number of years, and I still talk to the guys in different places. And I was talking to the guy in the Woody Point this past summer, a town of 300 people. And even their volunteer fire department had been trained up on handling EVs,
Cool.
the wires. So that's really not an issue. That's just a training issue like any new thing.
Like, anything else for firefighters, right? Yeah. Got a couple of messages in, which will food for thought here for your comments and thoughts. Here's a message from a caller that they left. They said, electric vehicle infrastructure is a significant challenge. There are limited charging stations leading to long wait times and queues. This person charges from home but lives out of town. Commuting is a challenge. He has been an electric car driver for 6 years, says it's a big frustration, says there just isn't enough infrastructure for electric vehicles. What are your thoughts on this? Go for it.
Yeah, at the EcoNext conference last week, the Hydro presented, and this coming in 2025, there's going to be extra charges, like two extra charges in Deer Lake, 2 in Gander, 2 in Clareville, two at Galway, Whitburn, and also down in Beta Spear. These chargers are going in now are 3 times as fast as the ultra fast. So you can just run more cars through. I commute to, like say, Corner Brook. 33% of my charging is done on the highway. Yeah, they've gotten busy over the last number of years, but I see a hydro responding. Yeah. So I don't see it as a major issue. The only big issue came up was when everybody went to see the eclipse at the same time.
Yeah, I too was there I was in Gander for it. Here's another text. Suggest you talk about EV battery replacement and factoring that into total cost. Also, there's the subject of and the EV fires, which we just talked about, but battery replacement. Have there been concerns with folks? And I've seen a couple of posts about, I don't know if the batteries were duds or whatever, but there have been folks complaining about batteries. What's the conversation there?
You're far more likely to require an engine replacement, and those are expensive. But the batteries are it's an inert item. It doesn't have a lot of moving parts, if any at all. The chances of requiring a battery replacement are going to be very low, and the powertrain warranty on vehicles that I've seen are 8 and 10 years, depending on the manufacturer, which are going to cover that. If you damaged your battery and, with something, it's likely that something has damaged your car as well, and that would be something that wouldn't be covered under warranty. Or if the car is out of warranty, what we're finding now is there's plenty of aftermarket options for battery replacement, like on the older Nissan Leafs. So, the stories going around of, 40, 50,000, pick the number, guys, come up. How much is it going to cost? It's not like that. But it's the stories that are circulated by the people who want you to continue to buy the vehicles that have all the maintenance costs. There's $1 to be lost from a lot of companies when you move to electric, and remember that. But yeah, right now, if you had an older Nissan Leaf, you have several manufacturers that will get a nice 60 kilowatt pack for your Leaf now at a fraction of the cost that I see rumored.
Are there any thoughts from you?
Yeah, the previous message, the one about the charging and infrastructure, and et cetera. Another thing about our enjoyment, my husband and mine, driving the EV6, is we have zero range anxiety. We don't have any. We don't even think about it. And I did drive across the province last summer and back. I stayed out in Lewisport at an Airbnb that had a charger installed in the place. We just plug it in like any other device. We plug it in overnight every 3 or 4 days, depending upon where we've been, and just like our phone, and then we unplug it and we go on. We go out
and it's easier to not lose these chargers, right? Because I couldn't find my phone charger last night, but I'm assuming, and I was like, "Where's the charger?" But I'm assuming they're so much bigger, you're not just losing those in your couch.
If you lose this one, I'm going to worry about you. No, we play pickleball in Torbay, and there's 2 chargers in the parking lot there at the Torbay Common, and it's free. And so we go out to play pickleball for a couple hours, and we charge up there. Go into the mall to have a little shop around, plug in there. It's not something that, like I say, and we don't even think about it. Now, we've only been driving it a year and a half, and even if I did have a deadline to meet to get somewhere across the province, you just factor it in. Yeah. I mean, I'm so happy I'm really grateful to Drive Electric N.L. I'm thankful to you for all the lobbying that you've been doing over these many years to try to increase and educate. But increase the chargers just in the province. I'm so happy to hear that, Joe. I mean, that's great,
good news,
isn't it? Yeah, and it's exciting to know that they're really fast. But even if they weren't fast, it's a way that you live your life when you know that you're driving electric. You just you plan it out. And I've been we traveled to BC a couple of years ago, before we owned electric, and I was just, you go to the supermarket and there's just so many chargers everywhere.
Yes, it's just about time, right, and getting the infrastructure in. I'm going
Yeah.
to go back to the phone lines. We got a couple people waiting patiently. Edward's on the line from Carbonear. How you doing?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear. Thoughts?
Good. Well, yeah. Well, I was in Vancouver last year, and I have to say, I got an Uber Tesla. And I was impressed. It's a nice car and quiet and very fast. And in BC, they got a lot of hydroelectricity there, and like your previous person said, lots of places to plug it in. But the electrical infrastructure in Newfoundland is not the same. our hydroelectric capacity in Newfoundland, hydroelectric capacity, is maxed out right now. If you were to go home tonight, 5 o'clock, and plug your electric car in, okay, that load, minuscule as it is picked up by Holyrood. You're burning oil. And so with the nuts and bolts of it, when you drill right down through it, it's not as green as you think. And if everybody, moreover, if like say 15, 20% of the people in Newfoundland had an electric car, we do not have the capacity, even in Holyrood, to maintain that. And the wires and transformers out on the pole outside your house are not big enough to handle that increased load.
So, Edward, are you referring to the load that happens around supper time each day? Is the peak that you're trying to avoid charging at? Is that correct?
Well, you can no. The peak in supper time is totally picked up by Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro in Holyrood. The background level this time of year is maxed out by hydroelectricity in Bay d'Espoir and these other hydroelectric plants throughout the island, and the minimal in-feed from Muskrat Falls. So any new electricity, regardless of time of day, any new electrical load is coming from Holyrood. You're burning oil. Moreover, you're burning bunker at a gross efficiency of about 35%, which is the industry standard for plants like Holyrood.
All right,
Edward. So this is not as green as you think.
No, and I appreciate the comment, and it also, Edward, it adds to the fact that, like, across globally, right? There's the discussion around, as we move through this transition of upgrading grids and of putting more into them and with infrastructure and everything else. So I think it's a very important point you brought up, and I appreciate the call.
Okay, I'm here in a new subdivision where I live here. If everyone got if 8 or 10 people got an electric car, they'd have to upgrade the transformers, the high voltage distribution lines right to the spring substation.
All right,
then
sir.
The substation, they have to be upgraded right to the transmission line, and you have to put in a new plant in Holyrood. Nobody wants that.
Well said, sir. Thank you so much for the call, Edward. All right, folks. So that's Edward calling from Carbonear. So he's, these are big questions that people have, right? Like around what is the impact of as we do this transition to get away from carbon.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? So on your level, for your understanding, what is the there's Edward was mentioning the impact there, and Holyrood coming online for peak hours and more. He was saying, right, even if everyone were to plug in, what's your understanding of this?
We've had that discussion with folks at Hydro Newfoundland Power in the past. One thing that was pointed out to us is that the province added on, I believe it was 2 terawatt hours of capacity between 2004 and 2014 with just normal growth. And this is about what we'd expect to see if we electrified every vehicle. 500 kilowatt hours per vehicle per year, 5,000 kilowatt hours per vehicle per year is the average. Mm-hmm. And we've seen that with our own consumption, 340,000 vehicles. And you multiply that out, you get about just under 2 terawatt hours, which is about the surplus of Muskrat Falls. The distribution system would need some upgrades, but what your caller just sort of missed was overnight the consumption on the grid is really, really low. It's underutilized, and all electric vehicles allow you to set your charging time period to be whenever you need it to be, and you can take advantage of off-peak rates or off-peak usage, whichever way you want to do it.
And that is part of that discussion I've been hearing too, right? Of just folks, the message getting out, and even having incentives for charging during off-peak hours in other jurisdictions, right? Because it's just like, hey, we've got the peak hours when everyone's, whether it's down south where it's the air conditioning or somewhere else where everyone's turning on their heat and saying, but actually here's the low point, and this is when it would work for you to do this. But also in my mind too, we've done shows recently on the Churchill Falls, the MOU, and where that could be going, and part of that discussion was Quebec and its growth and its energy needs into the future, and all of this goes into some of that. Well, it's population growth, but also the electrification of everything that we're trying to do, and what is happening with the transition. So it can be a bit of a complicated topic because it's a massive change. right? What everyone is trying to do here, like today, it's an EV conversation. Yeah. There's so much more to this conversation that we can easily, and we've been dipping in and out of it as well, right? A question though, tariff threats, right? We're on pause right now from the United States, from the U.S., from the U.S. government, from President Donald Trump. 30 days. What are your, and we might be getting a call shortly, I'm hoping, from a reporter to talk about this. In my ear, we do have him. So I'm going to go to him first, and then I'll ask you the question after he says what he's going to say. We got Greg Layson on the line, digital online editor for Automotive News Canada. Hi, Greg. How you doing?
I'm well. Thanks for having me.
Look, thanks for taking time out of your schedule to come on the show. EV adoption in Newfoundland and Labrador has been slow compared to other jurisdictions. I'm kind of curious about like the events of this week and the talk of tariffs, right? I know they've hit pause, but what could happen when it comes to tariffs and EVs and sales, whether it's in Canada or this province?
So a couple things. You caught me on a great day because sales just came out hours ago for the month of January. Nationwide, we are up. That's January since 2018. However, I have been talking to dealers, and some of them out your way actually this morning, who say February might be a bit of a rush to vehicles in general because of that tariff threat. It's not over yet. We just sort of escaped on the weekend or yesterday. I said, it's like winning game one of the Stanley Cup final. You still got a ways to go, but we're feeling good. And the problem dealers are telling me about everything, EVs and now sales in general, while they think there might be a rush to sales because they're afraid prices will go up, the consumer confidence in both EVs and in sales in general might take a hit early on in the year now that things are starting to settle down. And that's because we know there's no $5,000 federal discount available in Canada. And we know that Donald Trump in the United States is looking to eliminate their federal incentive of $7,500 U.S. And so headlines go a long way into forming opinions when it comes to new vehicle sales. And so when you see that there's not as much money available in discounts, and you know that price parity is still a long ways away, so it's more expensive to buy an EV, people start to shy away from them and look at something else. Now, you mentioned the tariffs. Well, now when I look at something else, those too might be more expensive in March or April, in May, if Donald Trump goes through with the tariffs. So it's really been a roller coaster ride since about the third quarter of last year and right up until this morning.
Wow. And yeah, obviously, given your job, digital online editor for Automotive News Canada, you are on top of it. Anything else we should be looking out for or thinking about as we move forward? And John, John wants to hop in on this too. Let Jon Seary hop in.
Yeah. What did you think about the fact that we saw two major manufacturers, I can't remember exactly which one, I think one was Volkswagen, offer to replace that $5,000 discount on themselves to lower their, to apply the manufacturer's discount to replace it?
Right. So we've seen it's more than a couple. It was about 5 or 6 that finally came to the table and said, look, we know that we promised you these electric vehicles and this $5,000 discount, but the federal coffers are simply empty. We will make up that difference on all vehicles that were ordered before the end of the IZEV program. So a couple things. One, I think it's good business. I think it's being a good corporate citizen. I think it's building a loyal customer base. It's probably the right thing to do. Two, I do find it interesting, though, that they're willing to pony up that $5,000 because we have run stories and we have seen data that shows automakers in some cases actually bake those discounts into their sticker price, knowing that they're going to get that money. So from where I sit in my monthly column, my column in January, focused on that, we might actually see now what the real cost and the real price of electric vehicles are, not just in Canada, but in the United States, because without those incentives, do the prices actually fall by $5,000 in Canada, by $7,500 U.S. in America? That is a real possibility. We've seen that happen when vehicles are removed from eligibility. Suddenly the sticker price falls because they're not eligible for the discount anymore.
You guys have any other questions for Greg before I let him go?
Just a quick question. And the 800-pound gorilla in the room is China.
Yeah.
And we have 100% tariff. Any thoughts on that? As far as driving EV
China,
sales.
There's a couple issues with China that the United States and Canada is trying to deal with. First, a majority of Chinese-made electric vehicles are more affordable than what we make in North America and even Europe. And that's because the Chinese government uses its bottomless pit of tax dollars and tax revenue to subsidize the production of those vehicles. We know that we pay some subsidies for factories, for battery production in Canada, but it's not continuous. The money dries up. It doesn't in China. So they will undercut North American producers at every turn because that tax money keeps flowing in as a subsidy. Okay. The second issue with China and why we have a tariff to keep them out and why we've banned their software and hardware in some cases is because just as we saw with Huawei phones and we're seeing with TikTok, there's a real threat of these devices and these vehicles being used to spy on the North American public. So it's a double-edged sword when it comes to Chinese electric vehicles. Hey, look, they're cool, they look good, they're quality. They've torn them apart in North America and said, these are as good as anything we make. But the problem is they're more affordable. I don't want to say cheap because that makes it seem like they're not well made, and they are. And they're also a threat to national security. So China is really the gorilla in the room, but there's a reason we're keeping them out.
Yeah, it's hard to put all that into like a car commercial, right? It's like less expensive, but also. I joke, kidding, folks. Greg, thanks so much for this. I appreciate your expertise on it because it's added a lot of great context to the conversation today.
Anytime.
All right, dude. Greg Layson there, digital online editor for Automotive News Canada. We are getting down there in the show. We do have one more caller to get to. Daryl is on the line from Gander. Hi.
Hi, how are you today?
Good. How you doing?
Oh, good. Thanks. All the best to you and your guests there today and your listening audience. What I want to talk about today is, the EV vehicles. They're recently on the highway there by Looseport. Electric vehicle caught fire, and it took them 12 hours to put out that fire versus if it was a regular gas vehicle, it would have been only about 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. And so the toxins, where's all electric? The toxins that was coming from that vehicle going into the atmosphere, that did more damage than a gas vehicle because they're saying they want people to stay clear of it, get away, because if you even breathe it in, it was detrimental to your health because it's all electric. So I had to address that part of it. Not only that.
And you got about 30 seconds for your point because we're almost out of time and I want to go back to the guests.
Okay,
yeah.
I'll get her in real quick. The EV vehicles are heavier than the gas vehicles, and they're saying it'll do more destruction
damage
to our highways and more wear and tear as well.
All right, Daryl, thanks for that. And yeah, that came up, and I'm going to put it to my guest before the show's over. That came up. I had we did a climate change show a little while ago with a prof, and she was mentioning that too, right? So someone from Munn saying, hey, they're heavier, and like electric vehicles have gotten heavier over time too. So Daryl, I'll say bye to you, and I'm going to put it to my guest.
Right.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, and all the best to everybody.
Cheers. We got like 2 minutes.
Yeah. So it's an emerging technology, and just as we don't put lead paint on our homes anymore, their new technology with battery design has a lot less. I can't remember the terminology on it. It's not substrate within the batteries is being reduced and changed and modified and improved to have batteries that are greater density for the amount of power they hold. So you therefore have something that's lighter, as well as efforts made to reduce this possibility of burning. And also then we also see firefighting equipment that I've seen available now, which allow fire departments, when you have this equipment, to address electric vehicle battery fire, just like we now expect that every fire department would have the jaws of life on it.
Stuff is moving that direction.
Moving, yeah.
All right. Heather, final thoughts from you today.
Well, I was very happy to be here. And
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you. My husband and I, 2 retired civil servants, and if we could make the switch, I think most people could, and I wouldn't go back.
Joe, what about yourself?
Besides the economic savings, the emission savings, one of the things I love about the vehicle, in the coldest day of the winter, I hop in, I turn the heat on. It's instant. You don't have to wait for the engine to
Instant, you say. Interesting.
It is.
All right, folks. Thanks so much for this. I appreciate you coming in.
Thanks for having us. We appreciate it.
All right, everyone. That is it for today's show. So, thank you to my guests there from Drive Electric N.L, Joe Butler and Jon Seary, and also Heather Godden, who's not a car fanatic, but an EV driver, as I've been saying through the whole show. Folks, tomorrow. First off, if you've got thoughts on this show or any show, the signal at cbc.ca. Voicemails, the signal line, 709-576-5260. Tomorrow, debating resource extraction. Think oil and gas, think rare earth minerals. What are the justifications and what are the dilemmas? So we're talking climate change, environmental degradation, thoughts about sustainable livelihoods. There's a special guest lecturer in town for the Henrietta Harvey Distinguished Lecture Series. Professor Nathan Andrews will be my guest tomorrow to talk about it all. Cheers.